Chapter 10 of The Coming People. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Coming People by Charles F. Dole. Chapter 10. Possible Revolution. Outward changes, economical and political, more or less marked, are always going on in the forms and organization of society. But today one can make a specially strong argument that great and radical changes are impending. No one can believe that existing conditions will continue in a world where all things move and change. Waste, extravagance, political corruption, fierce mercantile rivalries, colossal monopolization of wealth and of the industrial plan of the world, masses of dreary poverty, these are natural subjects for profound patriotic and humane concern. Is not the old social and industrial machinery, the competitive or wage system, showing signs of breaking down beneath its load? The question is quite fair whether any system is just that permits individuals to roll up immense fortunes as the result of lucky speculations, or of the rise of land values about a great city that permits other individuals to inherit almost unlimited money power, as men once inherited duchies and kingdoms, while millions of working men with small wages live close to the danger line of debt, or even of cold and starvation, and are liable to be thrown out of employment for months at a time. When in the face of natural wealth, never so abundant, and forces of production augmented indefinitely by science and invention, so many almost fail to reap any benefit from the resources which surely belong to the race, it must at least be confessed that our present system, both of production and of distribution, is not intelligently or humanely managed. Its results do not represent an ideal democracy, a brotherhood of man. No intelligent person has any right to be satisfied with such results. The Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts themselves must charitably be supposed to fall short of satisfaction with conditions that menace the equilibrium of society. No one can be surprised that men at the depressed end of the economical scale tell us flatly that we must have a new system to match our new ideas of human liberty and equality, to fit a religion that bases itself on love to man. Our new thoughts of the divine universe tend to emphasize certain ancient teachings, never before our day fairly appreciated, as to the true relation of the individual to the whole body to which he belongs. Who creates wealth? Who makes the great forces of nature? Who has wrapped up fertility in the soil? Where does inventive thought, the prolific parent of every modern discovery, come from? The individual by himself is helpless. All that he possesses, his strength, his skill, his genius, his power of organization, has its value from the place in which he stands in human society. Has he the gift of oratory? Its training depends on the literature and traditions of generations of the past. Its use is nothing without audiences of living men. Has the fortunate man the control of a new invention? He did not invent it alone. Thousands of investigators and students made it possible for him. 1,000,000 men by their cooperation and use give it mercantile value. A man's gifts, by nature, by fortune, by inheritance, by the combination of 1,000 subtle threads of influence, permit him to draw a great income from the products of the world. How much of this income is strictly and accurately his own, to do with as he pleases? What merely individualistic claim has he on a dollar's worth of the property in the creating of which he had the help of the world? Religion declares that he is a trustee alike for his gifts and his means. He has no right to waste or selfishly to enjoy what is not his alone. The facts of the universe pronounce the same judgment. The laws concerning property, however necessary and useful they may be, are the conventions of society. They establish legality, but they do not constitute equity. Whether it is expedient or not to permit Mr. Astor or Mr. Dole to hold acres of the land of the city of New York, the deeper fact holds that the Astors and Doles did not create this vast wealth, and have no right to lavish it as they please. Why should society, which has taken back from dukes and princes their claim to transmit by inheritance irresponsible political power, continue to suffer generations of Astors, great and small, to hand down an equally irresponsible and undeserved money power? It is not strange that many question the righteousness of a system which annually turns over a considerable percentage of the income of the nation to men and women who have done nothing useful to merit a luxurious support. It must be allowed that a very pleasant and even plausible picture may be painted of the new and better social system which is to take the place of the present regime. Mr. Bellamy's happy world, where every man is assured a comfortable living and no temptation to treat men unfairly is left, will captivate many readers. If all of us together may be trusted to manage government better than the despot or the oligarchy managed it, why should not all of us manage the problems of wealth better for all than the selfish few ever could manage them? Is it well for society that any individual shall hold in his own name a power which stretches over senates and controls the sources of production and the forces of nature, and levies tribute on the highways and the waterways of the earth? If a few must manage the wealth of the world, should men be permitted to select themselves for this mighty responsibility? Should they not rather be chosen, like presidents and governors, by those whose united earnings they manage, and to whom they should hold themselves responsible for a beneficent use of their power? If it is ever just to compare any scheme as it actually works with another scheme merely on paper, we must confess that between the old world system of individual property rights, exaggerated as it has grown to be in favor of the rich, and the proposed socialism which guarantees every man a place to work, the latter surely seems humane, democratic, and Christian. There are those who think that not only a new and radically different scheme must come in, but that it will come in with the pangs, and even possibly the fire and sword, of a revolution. They infer this woeful prediction from the course of history, which has been characterized by frequent revolutions. They point to the terrible era that terminated the old aristocratic regime in France. They remember our Civil War, with which we had to atone for the crime of slavery. They say it is an old law that all crime must be washed out in blood. Is it not national crime, they ask today, that thousands of miners are forced to live on a pittance? Why should not such death throes mark the outgoing of the present mercantile system, as have marked other dying institutions of barbarism? There are also in the present situation certain striking facts that may well make any thoughtful person pause. One characteristic of our age is the combination of capital. But combinations of capital are showing themselves more unscrupulous, more shameless, and less susceptible to public opinion than the individuals who constitute the combination. The corporations, besides having no souls, last longer than the lives of the men who make them. Men serve these corporations. Lawyers plead for them. Presidents and directors silence their consciences for them. Somewhat as officers fight for their country in an unrighteous war, almost with an element of chivalry. It is not necessary that all the men in control should be bad, or even that they should ever directly vote to perpetrate an injustice. It is enough if a great trust, a railroad, a school book company, quietly pockets and divides the proceeds of brazen or conscienceless agents and officials. If money is paid to secure legislation, if great checks go into the hands of partisan bosses ruling a metropolis or a state, if legislators are tempted to use their knowledge and votes for gambling on stock exchanges, decent men hush their better instincts by the subtle device that all this is business. Almost as if by an impersonal growth of evil, we have fastened upon a hydra-headed tyranny, all the more pervasive, tenacious, and poisonous for the reason that no individual cares to stand a sponsor for it. Here it is, it made itself. Grant that it is not desirable, nevertheless it has in its embrace the choicest business ability of the country. It uses the courts both to defend itself and to kill or wear out its enemies. It masses its powers at the seats of legislation. It uses and commands metropolitan newspapers and even the telegraph wires over which news to its discredit may not run too freely. It wields the obstructive forces of social, legal, political, and even ecclesiastical conservatism. Thousands of men and women drawing their income by its means are interested in the perpetuation of its life. Men of warm sympathies, who would scorn any act of personal dishonor, are more willing to receive their good dividends than to ferret out and veto the wrongful acts by which dividends are augmented. Neither, if they wish to correct abuses, do they know how to proceed, or whom to blame. They cannot even be certain that the evil reports touching their chosen investments are true. Such is aggregate and corporate capitalism, like a tremendous machine worked by some new and mysterious force. Do you wonder that many say that it must be destroyed outright? It is not easy to see how it can be adapted to gentle and beneficent uses. Will not the men who have made this machine, and whose living comes from it, rally and fight to keep it? They are among the ablest men in the land, wielding untold resources and unlimited credit. They persuade themselves that they are maintaining their rights and defending the established order. Opposed to them are the forces of discontent, jealousy, suspicion, bitterness. There is greed also and selfishness. Here is material for a revolution. Nevertheless, the time certainly ought now to be ripe to do better than permit the terrible cost of social revolution. All history, so far from establishing precedents in favor of revolution, sets up a long series of warning against the use of this method of attaining human ideals. It is a method that belongs peculiarly to the barbarous period. It always leaves a brood of evils behind. It is like invoking the aid of a fever in order to drive poison out of the body. The disease is attended by a succession of relapses. Even when the health is recovered, sickness is the ignorant way for getting rid of unwholesome or poisonous conditions. Intelligence would have prescribed sanitation and diet, self-denial instead of indulgence, obedience to the obvious laws of health. So in the great body politic, our vaunted war of independence would never have been incurred if only a few men on both sides of the sea had known what thousands of men know today. We had to fight to kill the slave power because we had not enough civilization, not to say Christianity, North and South, to cure the national disease by more intelligent and efficient remedies. We are still paying the consequences of our crude and drastic treatment. The truth is, the word of our age is not revolution, but evolution or growth. Revolution was among the conceptions of men who thought themselves to be in a dual world, fighting the devil and his inimical forces. Hate, bitterness, caste, wars, revolutions, torture, innumerable death penalties were men's childish methods of overcoming evil with evil. The idea of the divine universe sets these coarse and primitive methods aside, like the saurian monsters for which the world has no longer use. They may survive here and there. Doubtless to many who take short views, they still seem to be our needful companions for all time. But already to the clear vision of intelligence and humanity, they are become an anomalous and merely heathenish survival. We in America are learning to choose arbitration instead of war. We are demanding conciliation in place of industrial conflict. A mighty current of public opinion and sympathy, to which all classes contribute, the rich and the educated as well as the poor, runs now towards the support of any body of oppressed and ill-paid wage earners who make stand for more decent conditions. Experience accumulates in England and America to prove that if oppressed men will make the facts of injustice known, there were never so many persons whose friendly sympathies will not rest till peaceable remedy is secured. Careless as we often appear, and immersed in our selfish concerns, we do not deliberately propose to tolerate injustice or to profit, if it were ever possible to profit, by its ill-gotten and perilous gains. Aggrieved men, on the other hand, never before showed themselves so willing, with a noble self-control, to keep within those lines of constituted order upon which the welfare of all of us and their own eventual success depend. Moreover, so far as we seek a nobler commonwealth, this is not a state of mere plenty and comfort, of idle ease and fat prosperity. It is not enough to give every man a living at the cost of the people, with the least possible labor. Is it not possible that Mr. Bellamy's world lacks a fine element of strenuousness and heroic endeavor? Does it not look too much as if man had already attained his paradise and had nothing more to struggle for? At any rate, man's soul will never be satisfied by the mere fact that he is well housed and fed. There are great inward and moral conditions which it is much more important to satisfy. The world that we want to make is one in which men's best selves, their divine possibilities, are expressed. The just and orderly utopian commonwealth of our dreams is good only as it fits and expresses a manhood of which it is worthy. It must be a commonwealth in which bitterness and jealousy have not merely been put to sleep in the arms of plenty, but have been exorcised from men's hearts by goodwill, in which mutual respect and sympathy, not legal constraints, hold society together with their golden bonds, in which men have become disinterested, not by compulsion or by majority vote, or out of vulgar self-interest, but because unselfish action in homes and offices and shops and the state springs out of a willing, deliberate, and enthusiastic purpose. We can see no hope in the methods of revolution. They are diametrically opposed to the spirit of that true, humane, and brotherly life which is essential to genuine democracy and stable society. If we suffer the rule of the selfish, we cannot rescue ourselves by a mere change of parties or machinery, which still leaves selfishness in command. The ideal commonwealth must have the men of peace and goodwill in the halls and chairs of office. Selfishness is forever splitting society into factions. Selfishness and egotism cannot abide in the true and stable commonwealth. The selfishness of majorities is as perilous as the selfishness of the few. We have already seen that our ideal commonwealth rests upon a faith in a divine universe. The commonwealth rests also upon our faith that it is true to man's nature, as he grows in manhood, both to be free to do as he pleases and also to choose to be just and generous, to be free enough to hold wealth and power in his hands, and yet to be bound by an inner compulsion to hold all for the common good. If we can never produce such men, all our dreams and ideals are futile, and even revolution would be useless. If we are on the way to produce men of this type, there is no need of revolution. The coming man, as fast as we produce him, will give us all we need of readaptation, change, and reform, by his own characteristic method of orderly development, by social, industrial, and political growth. To believe in revolution is not to believe in man or in his magnificent future. Is it possible to find and state a principle by observing which we shall escape revolution, by which, as by Constantine's cross in the sky, the coming man shall win a bloodless and beautiful victory? Chapter 11.